Well, good morning, everyone. And Eva, I think if we're good, we'll continue to welcome people on, but we'll get this started and keep to our time frame as best as possible for everyone. Welcome to this morning's webinar, which is focused on buying Canadian, maximizing the domestic travel market for 2025. I'm Lisa Dar with the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia, TIANS, and we're so pleased to host this session today for the industry in partnership with our colleagues from Tourism Nova Scotia. Today's discussion is going to be very timely as we're looking at the current trend of Canadians choosing to keep their money in Canada and the impact and predictions of this Buy Canadian focus in relation to the domestic travel market for the coming summer. We respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered this morning and to live and work on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, which is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, and we recognize that we are all treaty people. Our facilitator today is Eva Gutsche, who is the Managing Director of STEM Consulting and Marketing, Inc. Eva works across Canada, assisting tourism operators in attracting best fit customers and leveraging opportunities. And she has helped a number of tourism operators in many regions expand their business to attract visitors from both the domestic and international markets. So welcome to everyone. Eva, welcome. I'd also point out that we are recording our session today. So don't worry about writing everything down. Focus on the messaging, and we will be happy to share the recording with anybody looking for it afterwards. Thank you again. And I'm going to hand over to you now, Eva.
Super. Thank you so much, Lisa. Great to be here and seeing some familiar faces in the participant list, and those that I haven't met, welcome. We've got an hour together, and we've got some great content for you. There'll be a chance for some questions at the end, so we'll just jump into the presentation. And so we're going to take a look at the trends of the domestic travel market and really what's predicted for 2025. The year from a travel perspective, domestically and internationally, has been interesting. Lots of shifts, and some of these shifts are going to be very positive for the Nova Scotia market. And so we're also taking a look at what's happening with the outbound, because that has an impact as well. So as visitors, travelers are choosing where to go, that impact of whether they do the trips that they've done in the past to the US or look somewhere else could very positively impact the Canadian market as well. And then really looking at this opportunity. So if there is a shift of a more domestic traveler, how can you leverage that? And then looking at how to enhance your product offering, perhaps, and certainly how to target your marketing effectively in order to do that. And then looking at the whole customer service aspect as we're kind of navigating this somewhat unusual political situation. How does that impact guest interactions and really working with your own teams? And so we start looking at Nova Scotia overall. It's a big market. And looking at 2 million visitors in 2024, and then looking at the key markets. And so these key markets, a lot of them are closer in, so you're looking at an opportunity there for the drive market. And so when you look at that visitation by road, large number are coming into the province by car. And so how do you leverage that? And how do you, as we're looking at some of the shifts, is that number going to expand based on where we're at? And so we look at the key markets. Nova Scotia is a big market in itself. So locals traveling around the province and then expanding into Atlantic Canada, and then the Ontario market. So with key focus on Toronto and Ottawa, but certainly the other regions as well. And then the Quebec market with a focus on Montreal. And then from there, we move out, so we're looking into the Alberta market, the US market with a focus on the Northeast, and then internationally, the UK and Germany are key markets for Nova Scotia. And so we start looking at the revenues. So we've got the market, we've defined who the customer is, but when we look at spend, big numbers from the US. And so as we're starting to look at how people are choosing. So Expedia did some really interesting research, and I'm going to share some of that with you. And really, before it even happens in the booking stage, looking at that whole search stage. So as people are considering, where might I go this year? And, from east to west of Canada and everywhere in between, Canada's nature and activities are calling travelers. We've got a great product in Canada overall, and certainly what you have to offer in Nova Scotia is a big appeal. And then, really looking at beyond domestic discovery, also international destinations are getting high search numbers as well. And so we're starting to look at the reason that they come. So the embracing nature, the waterfront, some of these key domestic destinations. And great news on the top 10. On the top 10, you will see Halifax County. So as a region has been defined. We're also looking at neighboring regions. So you're going to see number 4, number 10, close-in markets. So an opportunity there as well. So this is great news. So you've done a great job in marketing the destination and a high level of awareness. And so that is being acted upon by the visitor as they're looking to where they might travel this summer and into the fall and into the winter months. And so when we start looking at overall visitors visitors to the U.S. from Canada, and why is it important to look at that? Because those numbers are really shifting. And so as the Canadians are looking at buying Canada, travel is a big part of that. And so when we start to look at, the biggest Canadian source markets for visitor to the US are Ontario, BC, and Quebec. And so Ontario being key, so almost 50%, and then into BC and Quebec. So you look at that, if there is a shift of one of your key markets, which is also the key market for the US, there may be a good opportunity there. And so how we can actually track the numbers, and you're going to see a big drop here. So this was Canadians who had gone into the US and returning to Canada. So these stats are very current from Stats Canada from May of 2025. And if you take a look at 2024 and then compare that to 2025, very significant. And so we're also taking a look at US resident trips to Canada. So the Americans coming in. And so you're also going to see a decrease there. It's not as heavy as the other way around, but there's still a difference. And so we start looking at the opportunity from Nova Scotia. So you've got over 1.3 million visitors arrived by road in 2024 from the top markets that we looked at already. And the US is the 4th largest market, and it's also a key opportunity for growth. And so when we're looking at, is there an opportunity to shift some of those markets, the outbound Canadian into the US, to staying at home this summer? And so we're looking at factors impacting travel. And we're aware of all of them. So I've got them here, 3 kind of key factors that we want to take a look at. And the point to take a look at them is how do I look at the situation and then see the opportunity in that for my business? So certainly the strained diplomatic relations. So lots of talk on tariffs and other situations. And so that is having an impact. And so you're looking for the key inbound markets to the US, Canada, Mexico, and EU. And so the opportunity, so very much what we had taken a look at with the fact that you've got close-in drive markets, you've got a focus on Buy Canadian, you've got a strong presence in the market overall. So it's a really good opportunity. So looking at increasing some of that domestic market this summer and into the shoulder and winter season. And then there's also a possible increase from the overseas markets. So some of the overseas markets, you're showing a decline for those markets, some of the key markets, again, for Nova Scotia, that they're shifting away from the US and looking at other destinations. And so with the political situation, there's also a strain on the economy. And there's, talk of possible recessions and concerns about how the political tensions and situation may impact the overall economy. And so when we take a look at that, it could mean that maybe I'm not, as a Canadian traveler, going to do a big overseas trip this summer. I'm going to take a look at something maybe a little closer to home. And so there could be a more conservative spending and really looking at traveling into Atlantic Canada and in particular into Nova Scotia. And then, of course, the US exchange rate. So there's been some shifts recently. It was, what right now we're looking at about 136. It was into the 140s. But the dollar, the dollar goes, the US dollar goes further in Canada. And our dollar, when we're traveling, particularly into the US, it gets a little bit expensive for us. So there's an opportunity to increase the domestic and international traveler, partially due to US exchange rates. And so we start looking at what Nova Scotia's done in order to really take advantage and leverage, not more so really leverage this opportunity. And so some really strong marketing campaigns focusing on the drive market. We've got, focused on Ontario, focused in Atlantic Canada, also targeted messaging from April right through to August and into the Quebec market. And there's also US marketing, so it's still, the US is still an important market for Canada overall and for Nova Scotia. And, it's really focusing on what Nova Scotia has to offer and then back to that value statement we had talked about. And so I have a little poll here for you. So we're just going to launch the poll. Oops, sorry about that. One sec here. Okay, having a tiny little bit of challenge here.
We can see the poll, Eva, so people can see the questions.
Okay, so this is so you know what, we're going to come back to this poll. This poll was planned for a little longer. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to show you the questions that we're taking a look at. And if you just want to pop it into the Q&A, and then Jen's working in the background here and will give us some of that information. So just what's happening in your business. So when you're looking at business on the books, are you about the same? Are you up in comparison to last year, a little down? Are you showing a few less US travelers? And have you seen a growth in your Canadian market? So if you've got a moment and just want to pop that into the chat, that would be great. And then the co-host, Jennifer, is going to recap that for us. So I'll give you a moment to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue on with the presentation, if that's okay.
Eva,
And so, yeah.
Eva, we launched the second poll, so we'll get the results from that. So I'll hang on to those results.
Okay, we've launched both. Okay, thank you for that. Sorry about the little bit of a confusion there. You can the one we did launch is a few slides away, but that's great. We'll have some input when that pops up. And so, it's really about welcoming the US visitor and then, celebrating our Canadian identity. And so the US is Canada's largest inbound tourism market, and it's high value and it's important to Nova Scotia. And the political situation will shift. And so as we, have different thoughts and opinions about what's happening, it's important to recognize that we don't want to alienate a key market, and we will get through kind of whatever is happening out there. So you want to make sure that you don't alienate in your message, that you're as positive, as welcoming as ever. And so a couple things we can do, because there has been lots of media, as we've all seen, some concerns about how the welcome is going to be on both sides of the border. And so one of the things we can do as a business owner and operator is do a proactive reach out. So really looking at welcoming back our past customers, assuring them that that Nova Scotia experience that they've had in the past, that positive welcoming experience, is there for them, and you know, and inviting them back, and that whole message that all are welcome. And so these are some measures you can take, going through your own databases, sending out a quick note, putting it into your social media, looking forward to having you come back. We've seen some, you know, very good ads recently overall in the Canadian marketplace about that embracing the U.S. traveler. And the U.S., of course, has done the same with some of the campaigns of wanting Canadians to visit and say, we're here for you. And thank the visitor for coming. And so this is, you know, it was interesting in my own experiences this year. I was in the US on a leisure trip, and you know, the comment that resonated from many that we encountered was, thank you so much for coming. You know, and recognizing that there are some, you know, there is a little bit of tension, but that doesn't mean that your experience will be impacted other than incredibly positively. So that message of thank you for coming. And then if there's, you know, within your communities, if there's, you know, a way to ensure that others in the community are supporting that welcome as well. And then looking at your own online presence. So you have, you know, you've got your business identity and you've got your personal identity. And as we know, those lines get very, very blurred. And your own social media posts. You know, so, you know, if you're saying welcome on the one hand, but then there's, you know, liking jokes or sharing comments that may not, you know, really reinforce that positive message, might be a good time to kind of scrub that and take a look at it. And then also ensuring that your teams, you know, should be aware of the workplace customer service and social media policy. So if you have that in place, and making sure that, you know, you've got a really strong aligned message. And so I want to take a look at really dealing with some different political viewpoints. And of course, they're going to vary. So we all have opinions, and I think that's great that we live in a society where we can have those opinions and share those opinions. But the different opinions can lead, of course, to heated discussion. So if you see it one way, I see it another. You know, that can cause some tension. And so entering into a political conversation with whoever you choose to enter into that with is definitely your choice. But when you're looking at, you know, welcoming our international travelers, and some of these comments here are very focused on the US traveler, it might be best to avoid that situation of the political discussion and really focus on the gratitude that you have for that individual who chose to come to Nova Scotia in your business, even though there has been some apprehensions from others based on where we're at politically. And so if you don't want to engage in a political discussion, it might be a good idea to be prepared for that. So how do I ensure that I can graciously disengage from a conversation that I don't want to have? And the messaging here is, I've got some samples for you. It's really about creating your own response. And you've probably already encountered some of these situations. So where you're in a kind of uncomfortable situation, you'd like to get out of it, but how do I do that graciously? And so you've got a couple of options. So one is to segue. So kind of guide the customer, the visitor, or the person you're having this conversation, a potential conversation with, guide them into another direction. And do it in, you know, do it in a natural but very planned way. And state the other is that you can just state your position, which we've all been in a situation where this has happened. It's kind of going, oh, I think it's probably best to avoid politics and religion. Let's focus on this. So kind of, you know, really a little bit of a segue in there, but I really taking your stance that I don't really want to have this conversation. There might be some possible ground rules for your business that you want to put in place. So there needs to be alignment. So if you have decided as a business that, these are some of the strategies we want to put in place to make sure our visitors are having a positive and welcoming experience. Everyone kind of needs to be on board with that in order for it to be really effective. And so you want to align the staff in the messaging and also help them. So provide them with some tools and provide them with some ways in order to have a very positive impact on the visitor and be prepared when they're faced with something that they might feel a little bit uncomfortable with. And really, if we can focus on gratitude versus differences, that's really kind of the key nugget here. And so the segue is, finding that common ground to guide the discussion. And so much messaging on politics. Let's talk about something more positive. Tell me a little bit about what you're planning, while you're here in the province. And so if all of a sudden I'm in this situation and the suggested, this is not a suggested script, this is just an idea for you to kind of say, okay, if I'm faced with this, how can I move that customer? And it's got to be naturally in your voice. But the essence of it is really, let's talk about something positive, and what could be more positive than this fantastic vacation you're on. And then looking at, there's ways to diffuse these difficult conversations. So having an escape plan, and anticipate. If I know this might be coming, it's kind of like anything. If I have a sense that this is going to happen and I'm a little bit better prepared, it normally goes better. It normally goes well. Have a plan and a response ready, and then back to the focusing on gratitude, and be sure you speak for yourself. And so I've got a couple of possible comments, statements, questions that you might encounter. And so, let's talk about the tariffs. So tariffs, someone says, what do you think of the tariffs? And so tariffs have caused reactions globally, and we are, without question, we're each other's number one trading partners. So yeah, of course we're concerned. Time will tell. But in the meantime, I'm just so glad that you chose to come. And I'm so grateful that you're here. So looking at, if faced with something in regards to tariffs, so figuring out how you might word that. And so one of it could be, how how are you feeling about Americans? Are you having some concerns here? And it's really not mad at the American people, but I'm concerned about some of the political direction, because our countries have close ties and we have a long-standing partnership. And we've been fortunate. One of the key comments here is how fortunate we have been as tourism operators to get to know and welcome many Americans over the years. And we're so glad you're here. And a comment that, of course, we've seen this daily pretty much in the news, is the lack of Canadian tourists is really hurting US tourism. And yes, when you look at it, and from the stats we just looked at it, both countries have seen a decline in cross-border travel. And again, outside of our own countries, we're each other's biggest tourism markets. And so, again, having that statement ready, once things calm down politically, I'm hopeful that we'll see visitation back to what we're used to. And again, we're so grateful that you chose to come this year. And do you think we'll still be friends after all this? So of course the media plays a big role, as it always does. And so there might be some messaging out there that's implying that this is going to, this tension will last longer than we think, or how is this going to be long term? And we have a long-standing relationship, Canada and US. And there's been bumps along the road in the past, and I'm sure we're going to get through it. So again, thank you so much for being here. And so if I have these responses, if I anticipate them and have a response ready, and I help my team members with the same approach, things should be pretty good. And a good exercise with your team is really, let's take a look at some of the comments that you faced. Which ones made you uncomfortable? How did you handle it? Any suggestions from the rest of the team of how we could maybe work this? And bottom line is be thankful for the visitor who chose Canada and chose to travel to Nova Scotia. You know, a real expression of gratitude, and give them the welcome that they're anticipating, whether this is a first-time traveler or those that have already really experienced that Nova Scotian hospitality. And, you know, engaging might be tempting, no question there. And it's your choice. It comes down to your choice. If you're in a discussion and not aligned with that other person's political viewpoints or viewpoints on whatever you're discussing, there could be some tension there. And if I have a response ready and a way to exit a conversation that I really don't want to have, that might be the most effective approach. And so let's go back to that poll. So I'm just going to see what some of these responses were. So I'm going to share the results. So, and we're taking a look here at what active measures you've taken for your business to show openness and welcoming. So very much aligned to the conversation we just had. So discussions with staff and staff training, which is fantastic. And maybe a couple of the elements out of this webinar can help support even further discussions and training. Reaching out to your past visitors. So about 1/3 have done that. So signage, about 17%. And the signage can be anything from welcoming to kind of, you know, your views on whether politics is going to be discussed here. We've seen some of that out in the marketplace. Targeted advertising, fantastic here. So 83%. And messaging on your website and other social media. So this is fantastic news. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. Great, and so thank you so much for your input there. And for some of these, if you haven't actually started doing it, it's a great time to start now. So particularly that you've taken the time to be on the webinar today. So some of the things here, you know, will likely or hopefully resonate for you, and bringing that back to your team. You know, looking at reaching out to your past customers, aligning with advertising opportunities and your own social media positioning and posts. And so we start looking at, you know, the product that you have to offer. And what, you know, this comment, I love this comment, and it came down to what kind of welcome will American travelers get in Canada this summer? And a big welcome sign there. And this is from a US paper out of Cleveland. And Canadians, as anyone who's traveled up north has likely experienced, are some of the most friendly, down-to-earth people on the planet. I can't imagine that everyday Canadians will take their frustrations with US government policy out on American tourists who are there to spend money and have a good time. And I thought that really kind of captured, yes, we've got all this going on, but you know, we've also got this, you know, positive opportunity of exploring each other's countries, and certainly, you know, for wanting to welcome Americans to Canada this summer. And the whole focus on Buy Canadian movement, and it's impacting domestic tourism in Canada. You're seeing it as you're, you know, probably buying groceries and other products. There's strong messaging out there that, you know, this product was made in Canada and you're supporting Canadian business. And tourism is a piece of that, is an absolute piece of that. And so it's driven again by, you know, some of these political tensions, which has taken a shift to buying Canadian. And, you know, you can leverage that as far as positioning your tourism experiences to the Canadian market. And so when we start looking at, you know, the Canada's core market and re-engaging high-value US travelers, Canadians represent 87% of visitors to Nova Scotia. 9% is visitation from the US, but big spending, as we saw earlier. And, while domestic demand is strong and the Buy Canadian feeds into that, there is also an opportunity to focus on the US market. And there's all, as we're looking at what's happening out there, the focus on really promoting domestic tourism, some great opportunities have come up. And so some of these you may be aware of. This is very recent. And the Canada Strong Pass is a huge opportunity. And so this program will offer discounts and value to travelers traveling Canada this summer. And so from June 20th, we'll offer, and the Canada Strong Pass is going to give discounts and savings on a number of different elements of tourism. So let's take a look at some of these. So the Parks Canada, so free admission for all visitors to national historic sites, national parks, marine conservation, and a 25% discount on camping fees. So that's a big one. And when we look back to some of the topics we talked about earlier, so that that concern about how is the economy going to be impacted, for those visitors that are choosing to stay in Canada based on some of those concerns, here's another great reason to enjoy Canada this summer and enjoy Nova Scotia. So there's also free admission for children under 17. So again, looking at the different market segments out there. So focusing on that youth, young adult, the youth and the family market. Via rail, so free travel for children under 17 when they're traveling with an adult, and some great discounts as well. So another 25% discount for young adults. And then looking at some provincial and territorial museums and galleries. So, free admission for children, and then a discount for young adults. And so if you haven't had a chance to kind of look at this, we've got the links for you at the end of the presentation. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, it is being recorded. So go take a look and see, is there a way for you in your own social media to kind of showcase value from some of these new opportunities. And so when you're, focusing on local, so, looking at some of these opportunities, looking at the whole political climate and that whole focus on Buy Canadian. So, in your own advertising is really leverage some of what Tourism Nova Scotia has been doing for marketing. So really focusing on some of those key drive markets and have experiences ready. So you're looking at the family market. So if that is going to be a big focus for the summer, great. What do you have in your own business or in your community that you can highlight to attract that short haul market? Back to, of course, reaching out to past travelers. So earlier we said reaching out to your US traveler and saying, come on back, you're welcome here, but also looking at your domestic market. So some of the travelers that you've had a chance to visit, Canadian travelers in the past, great time to reach out to them and let them know some of the experiences that you have to offer in your community and the destination overall. And then, also consider the longer haul markets. So there is going to be, travel from Alberta, we mentioned from Western Canada, it's already a key market. So making sure that in your messaging, you've also addressed the international US and the longer haul market. And so there's a lot of fantastic provincial initiatives. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the Tourism Nova Scotia marketing plans, take a look at that and looking at some of the current marketing. And it's great when you look at the plan, it's broken down. It really shows you, which target markets are being focused on and how they're being reached. And is there a way for you to actually tie into that? So sharing some of that content on your own social media feeds, looking for some of the stories and looking for some of the photos that you can use. It's an incredible image bank. So how can I actually put that into my own social media feeds and my own advertising to create interest for my destination and my business? And there's a chance to distribute brochures through the provincial and community visitor information centers. If you haven't updated your listing in a while, it might be a good time to take a look at that. And certainly, as I mentioned, that digital asset library to promote the region. So some fantastic imagery, and that imagery, that creates an emotional response for the traveler that's considering where they want to go. So if they, are inspired by this image and they can picture themselves there, that's a great start for getting them to actually click on and choose your business. And so a couple of other things have shifted. So we're looking at the whole diversity and inclusion piece, and particularly as it focuses on the 2S LGBTQ plus market. And so the political messaging it's not just messaging, some of the political action from the US has had an impact on this market. And then we take a look at Canada's position overall on diversity and inclusion, and certainly the 2S LGBTQ plus market. Canada is very welcoming. It's generally considered safe, and it's an inclusive country with strong legal framework for protecting the rights of all, including the, as Canada recognizes it, the LGBTQ plus market. And it's, the equal rights, and we have same-sex marriage, and we have laws protecting against discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And the gender identity is key here because that is what's being impacted. And there's programs to support, overall. So this isn't necessarily a focused on tourism, but it is focused. The whole messaging is focused on the 2S LGBTQ plus market is safe and welcome in Canada and in Nova Scotia, of course. And so some of the challenges, the big challenge with some of the US legislation that came into place earlier this year was that there are two sexes based on the US legislation. And so that impacts the transgender community. And so many US, and this is really unprecedented, many US European countries have issued travel warnings against the US based on the executive order that state it is the policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. And so that could be, a problem for someone that's self-identified with an X on their passports. And so this move, and Canada is part of this move, and its European allies to issue these travel warnings, is unprecedented against the US. And it highlights a little bit of the tension with the 2S LGBT market. And as we're looking at how does that impact tourism? So, if there are travel warnings, against the US, particularly for the transgender community, they may be looking at other destinations. And with Canada's position on openness and welcoming and really identifying the LGBT plus market, there is an opportunity here. And so, it's really, how do I respond to this situation? And so there's an opportunity here to really reinforce that. If your business has, particularly if you've taken an active stance to say, all are welcome, and we have identified the 2S LGBTQ plus market as a target market for us, you may have some signage. There's opportunities to get accreditation under Rainbow Registered from the CGLC, Canadian Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. And that, that again says to the traveler, I am safe and welcome here. And they, will consider your business perhaps over others that don't have that, because this clearly identifies that you and your staff have gone through training, you understand the needs of the market, and the primary considerations for the market are safety, safety and welcoming. So there is an opportunity there to really highlight your strengths and your openness to the market. And so as we're kind of, we've covered a lot here. So kind of recapping, there is a shift happening. There's a drop in inbound travel from the US into Canada. And there's also a drop in Canadians traveling to the US. The US will still travel, but they, want to make sure that they are welcome. As we're providing that hospitality and that welcoming experience, we may get ourselves into some situations that we haven't encountered in the past. And so, some of the samples that we talked about, or the questions that may arise, it's a good opportunity to maybe work this through with your staff and go, great, what kind of a atmosphere and environment do we want to create for that visitor here? Maybe escaping from that whole political scene for a little while is part of why they're choosing the vacation. And so how do I make that space available to them? And then how do I actually deal with situations that I'm not comfortable with and I don't really want to have a discussion around? How do I graciously disengage with still engaging with the visitor and just having a way to segue that conversation and pulling that conversation back to really that message of, we are so grateful that you came. And recognizing as well that there needs to be alignment and congruency in your messaging. So if you're stating open and welcome here, and kind of almost a comfortable, maybe a little almost political free zone, you get a chance to chill here a little bit, but then I've got heated kind of statements on other aspects of perhaps even my own personal social media. You might want to take a look at that and see if that works and how you might want to change that. And really the focus here is about being open and welcoming to all. And Nova Scotia has done a fantastic job at really positioning the province for 2025. And there's an opportunity for you as individual businesses to really tap into that. And so I have all the presentation links at the back of the presentation, and then also the links for provincial initiatives. So you can take a look at these after. But right now we've left 15 minutes for some good discussion here. So I'm going to open it up for any comments, questions that you might have. So just ask that you pop them in the chat, and then we'll take a look at that. If there's things that you agreed with or disagreed with, we're happy to take a look at all that as well. But hopefully there's some materials here that will help you really welcoming the traveler from wherever they're from this summer. Great, thank you for your comment there. Lisa, saying that operators can also see some of the results. So I'm just going to pop that up again. See some of the results from the business confidence survey earlier this year. And if you want to take a look at that, you can find that on TIANS.org site. So have a take a look at that, and certainly encourage you to take a look at all the great resources that Nova Scotia has available, and particularly the marketing focus for this time frame, 2025, and how you can leverage that.
Eva, should we run the poll that we didn't run initially?
Well, I'm having trouble kind of sure, let's do it.
I can launch it.
Let's do it. Okay.
Just 1 second.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. Oh, perfect. Thank you. There it is. That's great. So yes, please, we would love to hear this. This is great for everybody on the call right now. So want to take a look at what's happening for business summer of 2025. So are you about the same? Are you up? Are you down from last year? Are you seeing more Canadian travelers? Or, what's happening with your US market? Oh, fantastic. Lots of engagement here. So that's great. And we're we're early in the season, but we're in season for the summer season. And then looking, of course, beyond that into a great fall and winter. So far it's showing up in comparison, which is lovely to see.
And Froke said in the chat that there's that they're seeing more Germans and British, less Americans.
Okay, interesting. So, yeah, and that was you know, one of the thoughts, and not just thought, one of kind of looking at some of the stats is that there is a shift in Europe outbound travel. Some other countries have also seen a rise in their European markets, and that's probably shifting away from some of the travelers that may have actually chosen US. So it's great that you're seeing them, and thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so we've got oh, let me just end the poll and share it with you. So about the same up in comparison, a slight number down in comparison, less US travelers, and a little bit more Canadian travelers. So it's great to see that, you know, you're seeing some of the less US, but we're also seeing travelers from that comment. Thank you so much, from other markets. Any other comments or questions? Okay, quieter group this morning, but that's okay. Hopefully that this is giving you some food for thought and some opportunities to really take a look at your current position as welcoming, and your current position as far as targeting your advertising, taking a look at some of the experiences that you're currently offering. Perhaps tying into the Canada Strong Pass, is there a way that you can leverage that? Are some of these experiences and opportunities in your community? Is that, you know, if it is, fantastic, a great post to send out, and great messaging to send out to your existing database, giving visitors a reason to return. So lots of great opportunities for you. And I'm going to pass it. I think I'm going to pass this back to Lisa at this stage, unless there's any more questions.
Super. And we do have time for more questions if somebody does want to pop anything either in the Q&A or in the chat.
There's a comment here. Yeah, let's just, I know what this, I think now is a time to raise the importance of collaboration between tourism operators by combining efforts, and then together a package could be developed that spans multiple regions, keeping visitor in the provinces longer and giving them more memorable experience. We have seen this to be successful with our clients. So thank you for that, Shelley. Great comment. Absolutely, you know, and when you're looking at the drive market, which is, you know, a big focus, it's not the only focus, but it is already a big market, and there may be growth in that segment, and that drive market is not probably just going to one destination. I mean, that, you know, that's the advantage of driving. They're going to be multi-regions. So great opportunity to band together with some of your colleagues within your community and neighboring communities, and put together a great experience. And even if it's a suggested things to do in the region where you're promoting each other, and then each of you promotes that on your own social media feeds and your digital marketing, and your direct to consumer marketing, you're all going to benefit. So a fantastic comment on collaboration. So thank you so much for that. Okay. Great. Well, I'm not sure if there's any more questions coming, Lisa, so I'll pass it to you.
No problem. Jennifer and I have also been keeping an eye on those as well. So thanks so much for what has been, I think, a really informative
session this morning. And I also want to point out that I think that, in some cases it's reinforcing the things that we know. Just have a note from Shelley asking if she can add something, and Shelley, you certainly can. Please do, and we will watch for it and comment and provide insight from Eva.
Great. Okay, we'll wait for that to come in.
Typing in, yeah.
Yeah.
And Jennifer McKean just noting as well, packages can be listed on novascotia.com and with your local and regional tourism channels. So, don't forget about, when it comes to that collaboration and it comes to that, packaging opportunity, it doesn't need to be complicated and it doesn't need to be difficult. And there are some great, team members at Tourism Nova Scotia that this is their specialty, is helping operators develop packages that are attractive for targeted markets. And there is a lot of play that you can get online through novascotia.com with those packages as well. And your local DMOs are always looking for additional opportunities to help promote also. Shelley's also noting here, tourism operators can access a 1-hour consultation with a digital marketing expert from Digiport, and that's through, again, support from Tourism Nova Scotia. And Digiport offers some fabulous resources that everybody should be considering and looking into for sure. So reach out again to Tourism Nova Scotia, who oversees that program, and they can support access for you. There's a question here saying, is anyone else seeing reduced Canadian but increased US travelers? This particular comment says, I've gone from 60% Canadian and 25% US to 40% Canadian, 56 US. So
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a bit of a change there.
That's great.
And I think too, again, Eva, some of this is going to be very localized in terms of what those shifts may be and what those percentages are, in terms of the adjustments and where some of those markets may be coming from. The pandemic really reinforced to us, I think, that we need to take good care of our domestic market and in particular our regional market. And if anything, this is kind of helping to kind of reinforce some of those lessons learned and skills that we need to continue to develop. When TIANS ran our business confidence survey that I mentioned earlier this year, a lot of the numbers that came back from that and a lot of the feedback that was coming back from that is very much being echoed in what you shared here this morning. We have a reputation to uphold as a warm and welcoming destination, regardless of where visitors are from. We don't need to let the political rhetoric influence what's happening when it comes to taking good care of our visitors. And in the end, it's all about reinforcing brand Nova Scotia, making sure that we're collaborating effectively together and that we're delivering on quality service and product for experiences for our guests. So TIANS and Tourism Nova Scotia is here to help you make sure that all of those things happen. And please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us here at the TIANS office or at Tourism Nova Scotia, our partners, so that you can access and leverage all of the tools and resources that are available to you as a business operator. So, Eva, I want to thank you so much for such, again, an incredibly informative session this morning. And we hope that the rest of you that were on found this helpful as you prepare for the coming season and think about what your next steps are. We're looking forward to hopefully welcoming Eva back for more workshops in the future. As we mentioned earlier, the session's been recorded and we'll have it available within the next couple of days through the TIANS YouTube link. We will get notifications sent out to people as well so that you're aware when it's available for a rewatch if you desire. So thank you all again and wishing you all a wonderful Thursday. Take care.
Okay. Thank you.